Let's look at borer beetles, an invasive species, and how dog culture is a driver of this and makes it worse. So, first, a summary from the U.S. Geologic Survey. So, invasive insects are a significant problem. They can cause extensive ecological damage, financial damage, it threatens local wildlife, can lead to issues like crop destruction and increased pest populations. Another thing about the invasive species and those insects, it makes us rely more on pesticides, and those have downstream problems too that hurt our health and hurt the health of the ecosystems as well. So that's just a little look at what invasive species can do to us. So now we're over at the Oregon Field Guide video. You guys might like this one. I'll put it in the description. It's interesting one about the borer beetles and the problems they're causing for Oregon.
These are our extremely large, beautiful Oregon ash trees. They are hundreds of years old. If this is lost, we cannot duplicate this for a couple hundred years. So it's worth protecting and keeping on site. As long as I'm here, they will get treated.
Okay, so she's out there on the trail looking at these borer beetles. So these things have caused problems in other states. I'll put you some links in the description about this. But once the trees die, then there's no shade for the shrubs underneath. There's no shade for the streams, and it can cause problems with salmon and other creatures that live in the water. And so in Oregon, the beetles were first officially found right here in the parking lot of the Joseph Gale Elementary School. So we're still in Oregon, just like that video I was showing you. So in that video, it shows the guy and his kids. He's looking at these trees here, and he's over here on the map. But they have the borer beetles in them, and they even find a stump that had the borer beetles. So borer beetles love trees that are distressed. And trees get distressed by dogs pissing on them and scratching at them. So if you zoom out here and do a search, we have dog parks over here. We have houses right over here. We have the Joseph Gale Gale Park. So this is a common place right here where people that don't want to go to the dog parks, they don't want shit over by their apartment house, they'll drive in here and let their dogs run along here and piss and shit. So these trees are distressed. And when a tree is distressed, guess what? It releases signals that actually attract the borer beetles. One of those signals is extra CO2. And guess what? Dogs also put out extra CO2. Very interesting. So let me just go over here to the Joseph Gale Park. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about with the presence of the dogs. Almost any park in, anywhere, a good percentage of the pictures from the park is someone's dog. There's a dog. And if we scroll around, it'll be more dogs and more dogs and more dogs. So what are these dogs doing when they run loose? They're going right over here. They're heading over to that parking lot. Oh, look, a tree for me to piss on. And if one dog is pissed on the tree and the tree is releasing different kind of signals, that's going to attract the dog over there more. And if there's a borer beetle flying around, guess where that borer beetle is going to go? It's going to go to one of those trees that one of these mangy mutts right here has been pissing and shitting on. So while we're looking at Forest Grove, Oregon, there's this thing called the Fernhill Wetlands Park. So wetlands are reserved for native creatures. It's supposed to be a place for them to go to get away from these nasty dogs and pollution and stuff and actually breed and everything. And dogs are not allowed there. But look at this. Just look at how freaking entitled these dog owners are. They have a whole website trying to force the local politicians into allowing dogs at the wetlands. If we go back to our map right here and we keyword search this map for dog parks, there's dog parks all over the place. But yeah, that's how freaking entitled these people are. So I just thought I would share that with you because that's the general attitude of dog owners. They think their dogs are allowed to go anywhere, anytime, and they will even, push push other creatures out of their own special wetlands just so their dog, can run around. So here's a summary of what I was mentioning a little while ago. But CO2 attracts insects, including borer beetles. Okay, so your dog is running around there out in the woods, running around, pissing and shitting on stuff, messing with the bark. Also, that dog's breathing CO2. So when a beetle gets a whiff of that, the beetle is going to fly there and it's going to want to leave its larva where there is more CO2. So the presence of dogs is going to attract more beetles. So here's another little summary of what I'm talking about. But dog urine harms trees. High nitrogen and salt can lead to dehydration and damage of the bark. Okay? And borer beetles, they prefer trees with damaged bark or are under stress. So you got all these trees, your dog is running up there scratching on it to get a squirrel, pissing on it, and you think it's funny, but guess what? It makes it easier for these beetles to lay eggs and feed on the bark. And a distressed tree that has damage to the bark, it releases certain chemicals and signals that attracts the beetle. So healthy trees are less likely to attract these pets. Yeah, a tree that isn't getting scratched on and pissed on by a dog is going to be healthier. So let's just go over to Texas for a little while. If you watched my other videos, you probably saw some of my stuff about how Texas is facing a huge problem with stray dogs. Huge problems. Well, guess what they also got a problem with? Borer beetles. Huh. Gee, is that a coincidence or not? I don't know. But why would I mention Texas right now? Because first off, insects are commonly found on dogs. If you go into the forums or talk to your friends, they will have pictures like this or stories like this. My dog has this on him. He had a larva on him. I found this on my dog. Little bugs all over my dog. Little white larvas down in the hair. There's just, millions of stories about this. There's hundreds and thousands of veterinary write-ups on what do you do if you find these little flies on your dog. So dogs transport these insects all the time. So dogs transport insects. Texas has a huge problem with these insects. And guess what Oregon does? We're constantly taking in these goofy, messed up dogs from Texas. They come over on trains, planes, and automobiles, jet planes, top of the line, transportation, Texas. We get all these dogs from Texas coming in, and what are those dogs bringing with them? They could easily have these larvas. They could easily have all kinds of other stuff. I found several stories where they have heartworms and other things too that show up later on after they get adopted. So these dogs could easily be transporting these species to our state or to other states. So that has been a little look at how dogs can easily transport these parasitic insects that mess with our ecological systems. The presence of the dog, the CO2 attracts these insects. The piss, the urine, the scratching, the digging around the tree bark makes the tree more susceptible to these creatures. And this is just a little image search, but it's how to keep my dog away from trees. So evidently this is also another problem in society is if you have a Christmas tree in your house, for example, or a tree in your yard, like some of these little write-ups talk about, you got to do all these things to keep the dog from digging at it, scratching at it, and everything else, because it ruins the tree, and then the dog comes back in the house with insects on him. Oh look, like this picture right here. This is like, but people think this is funny too. They think it's funny, but yeah, there it is. Dogs and invasive insects go right together. If the invasive insect beetles could send out a thank you letter to dogs, they definitely would, because they're just making everything that the invasive beetle does, they make it easier, and they likely attract the beetle, and they very likely are transporting some of the beetles across state lines in their fur and other bedding, as we know that dogs do already. See you guys later.